And I think it's really important and appropriate at the beginning of the presentation that we remember that the primary victims of the Holocaust were European Jewry. When we say that there were 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust, that doesn't really tell you much, that figure, until you realize that there were only about 9 million Jews in Europe before the war. So really that 6 million figure represents 2 out of every 3 Jews living in Europe before the war. And even that doesn't really put it into context until you realize that overwhelmingly those 3 million survivors are in areas never occupied by Nazi Germany. Let's look at Nazi racial ideology. We have to start and end here with Hitler. He thought all of human history was really a struggle for existence between races. And here he's vague. Sometimes he says race, sometimes he says Aryans, sometimes he says Germans, but generally he's thinking in terms of ethnic groups embodied by a nation state, that there are real biological differences between Germans and Jews and Gypsies and Slavs. The fundamental thrust of Nazi racial ideology is this definition. A healthy, vigorous people expands its population base of racially healthy individuals and expands its territorial base at the expense of its neighbors. A dying people has a declining population marred by race mixing and territorial losses to its neighbor. History is about the struggle of nations for living space, and living space is about the continued existence of the race. Hitler, looking in 1930s in Germany, he sees Germany as shortly before the abyss. That Germany has lost the last war, has had to give up territory to its neighbors. Germany has a high level of intermarriage between Jews and Germans, which in Hitler's racial ideology means that Germany is corrupting its blood and is then headed for extinction. And that's really the context when he poses as the savior of the German people, that he has the answer, he has the solution to understand German greatness and the great German future in terms of this racial vision of the future. For Hitler, Jews pose a special problem because Nazi ideology says all of human history works in terms of racial competition for territory so that you can expand your population into that territory. And here we have a group that doesn't work from a territorial base. Hitler postulated, and leading Nazi strategists agreed, that Jews must work differently, that they work by sort of infiltrating a host population, hollowing out the healthy institutions of that society to promote an international government of world Jewry. So by definition, Jews are a destructive race, right? They bring disorder and chaos wherever they live. The goals of Jews is always, by definition, race mixing to promote the extinction of the healthy ethnic race and the elimination of all states. The Nazis tried to bolster these base prejudices of their racial ideology with a new science called race hygiene. So race hygiene is going to be the key to show that they have a scientific basis in their view of the world and how the world operates. But we know that race hygiene is not a legitimate science. There aren't real biological differences between Germans and Jews and Gypsies and Slavs. Just think of how the Nazis define Jews. Do they ask that every Jew in Germany, some 500 and some thousand before the war, that every Jew submit to a racial examination? No. They instead use the religious criteria of the grandparents of Jews living in Germany at that time. So regardless of what religion the individual is, the Nazi state looks at the religion of the grandparents to determine who's a Jew and who's not a Jew. It's the ultimate bankruptcy of this race hygiene. Although the Nazis never give up on it.